Good afternoon, Australia. I'm Mike Raymond. Welcome to the commencement of another year of fabulous motorsport here with 7 Sport. Today we're at Amaroo Park Raceway for round 1 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, and there's been plenty of action on the track as I welcome my co-anchor for season 92, former national champion Bathurst winner Alan Moffat. Alan, we've spoken about the cars, but also the format has caused a few problems today for those who thought they'd be on pole.
Yes, well, with the new qualifying dash on Sunday morning, which we've never had before, normally Saturday afternoon takes pole position. But last night John Bowe went home with his Shell Sierra on pole, and after the 3-lap race today, he landed up 5th, so he's not too happy. By converse, Peter Brock was 5th on the grid last night, and he came 2nd in the race this morning, just behind Jim Richards, and lands up on the first row.
Here's the last lap of what we saw this morning, the Dash for Cash, the Peter Jackson event. And as you can see, Jimmy Richards was leading. Peter Brock was right on his tail. They come to the exit of Honda Corner, and a big move here down the outside from Peter Brock as he comes storming down to put the pressure well and truly on Jimmy Richards. Just couldn't pull it. And Jimmy Richards, of course, went on to win the 3-lap trophy dash this morning here at Amaroo Park Raceway. And that, of course, has changed the grid positions here today. It was close at the finish, Jimmy Richards winning from Peter Brock and Mark Scaife, who started off the back row. But I'll tell you what, Brock has been the big mover because he's come off position number 5 in qualifying to the front row. But Jimmy Richards, a very happy man indeed, as Andy Raymond caught up with him immediately after the 3-lapper.
Well, what a way to start the year for defending champion Jim Richards. Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you. Yes, it's the 3-lap race is really a little bit of a lottery because we draw for our positions, as you know. So if you're lucky enough to get on the front row, it gives you a pretty good start on the other guys.
You started out of 2 there, 1 for the first heat. It must be a big advantage.
Yes, it is, but it's probably really the second heat that counts the most because that's when our tyres will be really looking not too good.
Well done, Jimmy Richards. He has pole position in the Winfield Nissan. Out of 2 is 0.5 Peter Brock, the big achiever in that field. From 3, it's car number 2, Mark Scaife in the second of the Nissans. From 4, 35, Wayne Park in the Peter Jackson Sierra. From 5, car number 18, John Bowe, the first of the Shell Sierras. From 6, number 3, Trevor Ashby, the Commodore. From 7, car number 4, Mark Gibbs, the GIO Nissan GTR. From 8, it's car number 30, Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra. 9, a long way back, 25, Tony Longhurst, the B&H BMW. And rounding out the top 10, car number 17, Dickie Johnson. Well, that's the top 10. Here comes the field now for heat number 1 today of round number 1, the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship from Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. As we bid welcome Mark Osler, a regular member of our commentary team, and a good-looking field, Mark.
Certainly is a good-looking field. 21 cars on the grid this time, which is a great improvement on 1991 grids, I can tell you. But the thing everyone's really interested in here now is this big southerly breeze, which has blown up in the last 20 to 30 minutes. There's a lot of cloud cover. The temperature has dropped quite significantly, and this is going to have a big effect on the race, I'm sure.
Well, there's just a section of the crowd going up Bitchapave Hill. A marvellous turnout of spectators here today for the opening round of horsepower hostilities for 92. And as we mentioned earlier, the 3-lap trophy dash this morning has certainly played into the hands of Peter Brock, who got away to a marvellous start. There's Brocky in the Mobil 05 car. 10 seconds away from the start. The 1992 Shell Australian Touring Car Championship from Amaroo Park Raceway. Richards and Brock. Racing. Brocky off the line, but look at the 4-wheel drive advantage as he tries to cross to the inside. A block out the challenge. Wayne Park gets away beautifully on the outside as they come roaring up to the top of Bitchapave. The 2 Nissans side by side over the top and down into the Dunlop loop, and it is Peter Brock who will lead it from Wayne Park. Oh, Glenn Seaton very much sideway on the exit. There's Dick Johnson muscled in there. The GIO Nissan well back in the pack as Brocky stretches him coming down the back straight for the first time. A good start. And 0.5, the man who this morning pole vaulted from position number 5 to the front of the field. Alan,
You don't see a bad start from Jim Richards very often, Mike, but he definitely fluffed that one, and he held Mark Scaife up in the process. Brocky was wheel spilling off the line, but he's still with Jim's just hesitancy. A very long start, I might add. It's supposed to be 4 seconds. It was like 24 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to agree. That was a very long start.
I don't know what it is with those fellas with the buttons, but it's meant to be 4 seconds from red to the green. But Peter got a great start, and here he is now where he likes to be, out in front.
Tell you what, there's a bit of history being made here. The last time a Commodore led a round of the Australian Touring Car Championship was 1989 at Winton. when Gricey led the race for 3 laps. It's been a long time since the Commodore's been out in front.
Well, Brock's doing a good job off the front line, as Alan said so correctly. Jimmy Richards got away to a terrible start, and that really gave the opportunity for Brock not only to get away. We've had a little tangle up here on the approach to the loop, one of the Corollas going through and another one of the Commodores, I think, perhaps stranded over there. 74, the driver involved.
Frank Binding.
Well, something is on the car as we pick up on Peter Brock, the short run, down past the press room here at Amaroo Park Raceway. Now, Alan, given the wear we're going to have on tyres today, how has Brock got to play this? We've got 28 laps of competition for Heat 1.
Yeah, well, he'll love doing this. This is where he really comes into his abilities. He'll be able to nurse it. He's got a nice gap. He's actually got a very comfortable gap, considering we're only 3 laps into this race. He'll be able to nurse the tires just enough to give him what he would consider a reasonable degree of tires left in the second heat. All the other fellows will be nursing as well, but it's awfully much easier to nurse from the front.
Looks like Glenn Seaton in car number 30, the second of the Peter Jackson cars, getting by Wayne Park as he now picks up second. Park drops back to third. We take the car number 30 off the start to show you how the 2 Nissans lag down. Glenn Seaton able to get up on the outside. You see the 2 Nissans across to the right as he catches one, moves up here on the inside of Jimmy Richards. Can't pass Richards. They now drop into Dunlop Loop. Brock is long gone. Wayne Park is following him and coming back to the inside, looking for a pass on the inside, but Jim closes that up. That was the start from race cam of this heat number 1. Getting pretty testy here behind Wayne Park is Trevor Ashby, one of the top Sydney drivers, and I think has done a marvellous job this weekend in the Lanesvale Smash Repairs Commodore. And here he comes up on the inside of Wayne Park.
Yes, Trevor's really on a roll this weekend. He was qualifying in the top 3 in the first 2 practice sessions yesterday. Behind him, the action starting too. Johnson and Park locking horns in the 2 Sierras.
Well, Dick Johnson didn't participate in the Dash for Cash this morning, so his tires are 3 laps fresher than the field. He's reasonably happy with the setup on his car, although he wasn't too far up on the grid, but coming through now with a vengeance.
That shot is really hard on our cameraman. They come to the top of Bitchapave Hill again. Dickie Johnson, the Shell Sierra, car number 17, picks up the inside back wheel as he makes the downhill approach to Dunlop Loop.
It's a terrible feeling at the top of the hill, Mike, when you hit that curb, because you can roll over and you got a nice bank waiting for you. They won't want to do it too much harder than they're doing. It's normally just picking up the left rear, but if they ever hit it with both sides, front and rear, then it's quite easy to flip one of these cars.
Alan, you perhaps might like to talk us around a lap of Amaroo Park as we take our Dunlop race cam with Dick Johnson trying to pick up Trevor Ashby and also Glenn Seaton as they come down to the late corner.
Down into the late corner, down hard on brakes, into second gear, a little bit of a turn there. He's fighting the wheel. Now he's planted it. Here we come into third. Just a little nurse looking at that Armco on the left-hander, and now again, bang, hitting it. You can see how close to the Armco he was. Up through the transmission, well over 100 miles an hour over here. Now starting to think about this curve. You can't see where you're going. Just didn't hit the curve that time, or we would have seen the car jiggle a little bit. Nip it in here a little bit, feed it. You notice he's not hurting. He's nursing the tires. He's not thrashing the car. If he's thrashing it, his steering wheel would have been in the other 180 degrees the other way. He's just coaxing it around. Another little coax here through the right hand on the back straight. And here the engine not terribly under stress at the moment. Whoop, a little bit of a brake lockup perhaps. Corolla in the way. Traffic. Now he's going to zip up behind this Commodore in front of him. Again, tight on brakes. Actually driving, well, yes, again, he's got bogged there. The turbo lag, he wouldn't have liked that. He'll try and nail this car on the straight for sure.
Here he comes now. Completion of one more lap. Trevor Ashby got away from Dick that time with a bit of acceleration. Now the pop-off valve with the Nissans are playing with. We also have rev limiters on the Sierras.
7.5 on the Sierras and 7.5 on the V8 Commodore. So the engines are not screaming as we have heard them in the past. Engine percolating along just very nicely in go shell go well mode there, mate.
And a good plug for it too. Peter Brock continues to lead. Glenn Seaton runs in second. I'll tell you what, Brocky's done the best bolt of all time. He has opened the gap up to probably about 10 car lengths. There's not a lot between this four. You can probably see just going into the late corner. There's Brocky now, followed by Glenn Seaton, then Trevor Ashby, right behind Dick Johnson. That's the top 4 on the field at the moment. John Bow would be next, followed by the two Nissans and then the first of the BMWs. But here's Brocky.
Well, definitely controlling the race, and he's got pace. He's certainly not worried, as you can notice. Not throwing the car around. He's nursing that car, controlling his tires, not sliding, just coming around that loop nicely, putting on the power. He's got enough power to obviously stay in front of this field. And the finishing position, Mike, in this race is he doesn't have to be 20 miles in front. He just has to get by. So he'll be watching his rearview mirror now to see just how close Glenn Seaton can sneak up on him. Oh, not too much of that brake lock up, although not too savage. Only a concern when you see a great plume of smoke come out from the tire. You know that it's had a real big flat spot, and then we'll start vibrating and shaking the car to death. Here's Dick Johnson having a go at Trevor Ashby. Not gonna like this one, doing everything. Oh, Dick very gentlemanly there, I must say. Ashby a real handful around here, but there he's through, and he was definitely being held up by that Commodore.
That was a good move, and it was caught by our race cam. John Bow was having a big run as well there in the 18 car. There's Ashby going through in the 3 car, then the two Winfield Nissans nose to tail.
We certainly can't complain about the racing not being tight enough. There's only 6.97 seconds between the leader Brock and Jimmy Richards in the Nissan, so these leading guys are all bunched up very tightly. This is what we want to see.
Keeping in mind, I know we mentioned at the top of the show, John Bow yesterday came out and took pole away, provisional pole, from both Mark Scaife and Jimmy Richards, then pole position number 1 for the trophy dash this morning, and then unfortunately it all got away from him, so he had to start back on the 3rd row today. Now this is getting interesting with car number 2, Mark Scaife, up on the inside now. Trevor Ashby, moment of truth.
Well, Ashby's no chicken around here. They do a lot of development work here, and he's been driving at Amaroo for many, many years, and certainly does have a handle on this circuit, and he's not allowing these guys just to run by as they feel like it.
Look at this, a BMW.
Those were the BMWs that weren't going to go very well, Mike, but they seem to be up there fairly quickly already.
Alan Jones splits the two Nissans. The Nissan's heavily handicapped. And we saw at the start a repeat of what we saw in the Winfield Triple Challenge at Eastern Creek only earlier this year. With that reduction in horsepower, they really do bog down on the line.
Now the race is well and truly into a nice mode here. Actually, Ashby's making life difficult for everybody, but no, he's in the race along with everybody else. A nice move there by the first of the Winfield cars, and here comes the second one looming up. Not going to outbreak a BMW into Lake Corner, that's for sure.
And look who's sneaking up behind Jimmy Richards,
yeah.
Tony Longhurst. So the two B&H BMWs getting well and truly a move on, and we're not even 10 minutes into this first heat.
Well, we started the race with 5 Commodores in the first 15 cars, 5 Sierras, the 2 BMWs, and the 2 GTRs. And here we are all now grouped up nice and tight with Brocky out in front and Trevor Ashby holding the second Commodore as we see him at the moment.
Quite amazing yesterday at the press conference after qualifying. Alan Jones made a few derogatory remarks about the fact that he'd known that the BMWs had to carry 60 kilos and there were 25-minute races rather than one 50-minute race. He may have had second thoughts about even wanting to drive this season. I pointed out to him this morning that I thought that was a fairly unfair criticism, not only of the series, but give it a chance for at least one race, and here they are right up on the tail of the Nissan.
Yes, in the first heat already. Yeah.
Now it is clouded over Amaroo Park Raceway. Had a brilliant day of sunshine up until about 10-15 minutes before the start of this race. I reckon the temperature's knocked off 10 degrees and rain looks quite imminent. Now they've come up to work away on Trevor Ashby, and to his credit, Ashby hasn't done anything wrong in this race. When he's got off line, he's held his line. He hasn't tried to charge back and close the gate on everyone. Now the two Bimmers are going to attack Ashby as they run downhill.
Good chance here under brakes into the right-hander. The bottom, not quite. He's guarding his corners. He's using the track as he would. The Commodore's a wide car, hard to get by. These fellows are going to have to work, but I don't think he's long for this world once Tony Longhurst and Alan Jones just get one more run at him.
Look
perhaps.
at Bondi, straight up on the inside of one. It wasn't Bondi, it was the GIO Nissan, I'm sorry, up on the inside of Alan Jones. And once again, Trevor Ashby getting some good exposure for his sponsors, Dulux and Lansvale Smash Repairs, because he's in there and he's competitive. He's up amongst them today. So order has not changed. The two Nissans start to pull away from Ashby's number 3 Commodore as they set sail after the leaders. Brock still leads.
There's The BMW flashing his lights, starting to get a bit frustrated behind this Commodore now. There's going to be a dart under brakes here, but Ashby's entitled to take the line on the inside. There's no sin against doing that. He'll hold the inside line here if he wanted to, although Tony Longhurst is likely to take a nice old dash at it. No, not quite the steam to do it. It appears that on this circuit, with the car handling the way he wants it, Peter Brock is having no difficulty holding the rest of the field at bay.
Let's check them out for you in the Shell race score. Peter Brock and the Mobil 1 Commodore leads round 1. Race 1 from Glenn Seaton's Peter Jackson Sierra. Third is Dickie Johnson. Fourth, John Bow. And fifth, car number 2, Mark Scape, the first of the Nissans. Back here at Amaroo Park Raceway, up front, the challenge is on from Glenn Seaton, the Peter Jackson Sierra, as he hones in behind the tail of the 05 Peter Brock Mobil Commodore. They come down the hill, and Seaton has been clawing away at Peter Brock's lead lap after lap as we take our race cam. Sitting up on top of car number 30 on the approach now to the late corner. Brock on the brakes.
Well, there's no doubt that we've got a good set of tires on both of these cars. Bridgestone covering both Peter Brock and Glenn Seaton. They've obviously got a batch that's working well here today. May not be so happy in the second heat, but it's certainly a nice place to be deciding where you're going to be entering the second heat. And Glenn giving it hell up the Bitchapave Hill.
Once again, they drop down into the loop. Brock doing this very, very smoothly, and so too Glenn Seaton. Had a great season last year in 91, and certainly opened 92 on the right note by winning the Winfield Triple Challenge at Eastern Creek. Out-qualified by his number 2 driver yesterday, Wayne Park. They did a lot of work on the car overnight. Gap about the same, Alan?
Yes. He's not really terrorizing him. He may be happy enough to say, look, it's not worth burning up my tires for first place. I've got second. I'm on the front row of the grid for the start of the second heat. Anyway, can't do much better than that.
There's Johnson going through third. Bow is fourth. Then the 2 Nissans, the lap car Tim Grant. Then Tony Longhurst, followed then by Mark Gibbs. Alan Jones is your next driver, followed by Colin Bond. Trevor Ashby, who's dropped back through the field. Wayne Park is the next driver. Terry Finnegan and Brian Callahan. That looks like the order of the leading contenders as we pick them up coming down the back part of the course. Still very, very murky, the weather above.
You might notice, Mark, that all the cars are in the field. That the little bit of engine stability, just bringing those revs down a little bit. Last year, the Commodore teams were revving their engines over 8,000 RPM, wondering mysteriously why they were blowing up every 5 minutes. But now at 7.5, they can hold the motor together. The tires are built to do the job for a certain duration, and this is what we got, a race on our hands.
That's certainly the way the regulations are heading, and we're all looking forward to 93 as well, when we'll be stipulating a rev limit on the cars back to normally aspirated engines, and should have a lot more reliable race cars out there. Meanwhile, Seaton continues the pressure on the boss as we take roof cam, race cam. Bird's eye view of chasing Peter Brock through the back part of Amaroo Park. And while the boss is out there still leading the race, we have word that Niels on Wheels Crompton, unfortunately, has had to pit. So
he was, I think, running about 15th.
Yeah.
And, they're getting bigger and longer now.
Yes, well, it'll always stop in the same spot no matter what Peter does. The tire will stop where it's had that little bit of a wear factor, and unfortunately this flat spot is just accelerating and accelerating it. So they'll have an awfully good look at it during the break, but they're not allowed to replace it.
I guess, Alan, it's one thing to hold off a fellow competitor in second place, but when you're driving a big, heavy car like the Commodore, That's an additional pressure for Brocky, isn't it?
Well, you have to stop for the corner. You must get around the corner, and the temptation to press that pedal when you've overcooked it a little bit. It's very, very hard. These cars do not have.
Okay, Peter Brock continues in the number 05 Mobil Commodore. The gap probably opening up. Brock actually opens that up just a little bit. Neil Crompton's in the pits. Let's go down to Andy Raymond.
Yeah, problems with the second of the Mobil cars. Neil Crompton, what went wrong?
I got quite a reasonable jump off the line, Andy, and then there was a bit of a kerfuffle up the top, and I ended up on the wrong side of the action, sort of dropped back a bit in the scheme of things. And whatever lap it was then just ran out of oil pressure, so got to put it away before we spend a fortune.
Not quite the start to the season you would have liked.
Better than last year.
Thank you very much, Neil Crompton and Andrew. We've got a great scrap going on here. The two Nissans getting all over John Bowe. Bowe was running back behind Dick Johnson, so they've been able to separate DJ at the moment. Johnson just exiting that turn. Bowe catches himself just a little offline going through there.
One thing we must remember, Michael, these cars do have the four-wheel drive. They're the only two in the field with the four-wheel drive. And in a race of this strategy where you're trying to nurse your tires, they've got the ability to have each corner being nursed nicely. The car itself is helping them along. They've sat back in a bit of a groove the first half of this race, but now look as if they're intent on getting better placings.
Peter Brock continues to lead Heat 1 of Round 1, the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, over Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra. Dick Johnson runs back in third. Fourth is Mark Scaife. Fifth is Jim Richards, and sixth is John Bowe in the second of the Shell Sierras. Now the whole idea is to try and just keep this tight on the exit to this turn. Keep it very tight, because here comes Jim down the inside. Side by side, and Richards in the Winfield Nissan. Johnson comes down, but he's got to get back behind him because he's going to have Mark Scaife up the inside as well.
Once Mark Scaife in the number 2 car, that's Richards hammering around the back of Johnson there.
Yes, I must apologise, I got the cars wrong there. It was Mark.
Well, a lot of red cars, hard to follow there, Michael.
No, I got it wrong all day,
actually. That time, but,
by our counting, there's 3 laps to go in this heat, so things heating up toward the end of Heat 1.
Well, they're heating up for third, but the situation remains about the same at the front of the field. Peter Brock leading from Glenn Seaton's Sierra. These three have had a great scrap. And there's the little Bimmer still in there.
Yes, not exactly out of it.
No, it's not out of it, is it? John Bowe closes up now into the tail of the boss's car, number 17. As they come down the back straight. Let's take race cam with Dick Johnson. It's been a fascinating scrap between you and the Nissan, Dick.
More than fascinating, pal, I can tell you. Pretty busy here, Mike, I can tell you.
Yeah, I won't hold you up for too long.
That's all right.
How's the car feel, and the tyres, more importantly?
Well, the car feels fantastic. And the left rear tyre feels like a bowl of custard.
Now, come on, Dick. At least we could have got a bloody, ice cream cone. Oh, well, maybe we better leave you alone. Little oversteer there. Nicely held.
Oh, is that me mate AM, is it?
Yeah.
Why aren't you out here, buddy?
Well, you're doing it so well, and actually, I think you're having it a bit easy. Get your foot down and chase those 2 cars in front of you, mate.
I'm trying.
I'll let you get back and try. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks, pal. Nicky Johnson. As the 2 Nissans, Mark Scaife and Jimmy Richards, run nose to tail. Looking for that break. It's Peter Brock still leading, going down to the lake corner.
23 minutes, 30 seconds.
And I tell you, this is going to be close, because Glenn Seaton, as you'll see shortly, is getting a little bit closer to the tail of Peter Brock's car as these 2 cars exit the turn.
There's the last lap board being held.
Last lap board, so is Brocky going to come up with a heat win?
I'll tell you what, if he does, he's going to create even more history. The last time a Commodore won a round of the Australian Touring Car Championship was 1987 at Surfers Paradise. It's been that long since a Commodore has won a round of the Touring Car.
Well, hang on, it's not over yet, Mark. Let's not get into the history books. Glenn Seaton is going after Peter Brock in the biggest possible way as they come down the back part of the course. The last lap board is out.
2 big braking areas here. This one at the end, at the bottom of this hill, and then again at the lake corner. The Sierra a little bit lighter, might be able to take advantage, but looking
a bit too far back.
A little bit too far.
Yeah. But he closes and closes quickly under brakes. They're coming up to the short straight. There's no room. A few lap cars. Checkered flag at the ready.
Great
New
drive.
regulations, and Peter Brock takes heat number 1 of round 1 of the Shell Touring Car Nationals at Amaroo Park. Second place will go to the Peter Jackson teamster, Glenn Seaton, and Mark Scaife will finish third. Jim Richards fourth, Dick Johnson fifth, and sixth place will go to John Bow in car number 18. Well, that's answered a few of the criticisms. Certainly the additional weight has made it maybe a little bit tougher for the BMW, but wait till Heat 2 a little later in our telecast, because the BMWs are certainly going to be a little fresher. Let's check them out on the Shell Race Score. Peter Brock, hey, there's a bit of history in the Mobil 1 Commodore. Glenn Seaton second in the Peter Jackson Sierra, third Mark Scaife in the Winfield Nissan, fourth Jimmy Richards in the second of the Nissans, and rounding out the top 5, car number 17, Dick Johnson. And we'll be back at Amaroo in just a moment. So plenty happening in our motor wrap right now. The touring cars are back out on the racetrack, coming in to line up for heat number 2 today of round 1, the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Here's how they will line up. Peter Brock, by virtue of winning heat 1, starts on pole in heat 2. Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra out of 2. Mark Scaife, the Winfield Nissan, out of 3. And Jim Richards, the second of the Nissans, out of 4. Dickie Johnson starts out of 5 in the Shell Sierra. John Bow out of position number 6. Then Tony Longhurst in the first of the BMWs, followed by Mark Gibbs in the GIO Nissan GTR. Alan Jones out of position number 9, and Colin Bond in the Caltech CXT Sierra out of position number 10. So Peter Brock and Alan, it has been declared a wet race, so everyone is on wet weather rubber.
That's fresh ones, of course.
So 10 seconds away from the start. The weather has cleared. You could have a dry line here and some pit stops. The tension, the action ready to come from Amaroo Park. Heat number 2. And off the line goes the Nissan, out and gone, the pair of them. There goes the third Nissan up on the inside. No advantage with four-wheel drive, they say. Don't you believe it? And the rest of them are just straggling up the hill now, trying to get traction off the line. Over the top and down into the loop.
Well, that was a reversal of the first heat where Brock got an immaculate start. I think he definitely fumbled the clutch on that one. Didn't want to get too much wheel spin. Took it a little bit easy, but the four-wheel drive just leapt off the second and third row of the grids.
Couldn't get better indication of the performance than that. Mark Gibbs starting from 8th position on the grid. He was third through the first corner. These things have got some traction, all right. And the wet conditions, we haven't seen the GTRs run in the wet yet. This is the first time, and they are quick.
I tell you what, 60 kilos of difference to the BMWs. Have a look at them running down. They're just powering down the outside. I would say they've probably gone for the softest wet weather tyre. And there's a bump going on with John Bow. I tell you what, that's Alan Jones. They've had a battle of words going for a while.
That's Tony Longhurst.
No, it's Jones behind.
Well, there's Jones coming up beside him now, so there could be a bit of a... Here we go. Jones will look down the inside.
Well, the rain is a great equalizer, Michael. It brings everybody into gear. The drivers have still got to be extremely brave, and they've got to be extremely delicate and very careful with what they're doing.
Jones down the inside.
Obviously, they're feeling no pain whatsoever. Either Tony Longhurst got a little wide there. Ooh, he was lucky. Up on the nature strip there, or if you want to call it a nature strip. Definitely slippery when you get those tires on those curves.
So the BMW is a new lease of life, as Alan said. Rain is the great equaliser. These little bimmers with their 60 kilos not showing any sort of restriction in the wet weather conditions. Brocky still hanging in 4th position behind the 3 GTRs. Mark Gibbs there in 3rd.
Okay, we'll have a look at them across the line. It's Mark Scaife, the leader, from Jimmy Richards. Mark Gibbs runs 3rd on the road. As we look at the replay off the starting line with Glenn Seaton, just look at the acceleration of those 3 GTRs. There's Brock. Johnny Bow moves up quickly.
Well, they talk about slingshots, Mike, and boy, if that wasn't one, you'll never see one. Just tremendous. And if there was ever a vote for four-wheel drive on the road, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you're looking at. This is where the technical excellence comes into their own, and that's why you would have it if every manufacturer was prepared to spend the money doing it. A very nice luxury, but on conditions like this, just a dream.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Mark Scaife is in there. Actually, if Scaife goes on to win this heat takes preference over the previous one. He will wind up being the round winner of the day.
Now look at the BMWs all over Brock. He's just holding them with sheer torque and power coming out of that corner, but they're going to make life very hard for Peter as this race unfolds.
Well, we got the BMWs shot with Yokohamas, and Brocky's on his traditional Bridgestones. You can be sure of one thing, that those rain tires are absolutely tailor-made for those two little BMWs, and they will be able to drive them and do exactly what they want. And they are now truly harassing Peter. He is holding them up, but it's not for him to pull over and let them go by either.
No, they're going to race past him. He hasn't got to hand them the placings.
Be much more comfortable for Brocky at the moment. He's got a heavier car, 1,300 kilos against the 1,040 kilos. But here's the first go, a little stab. No, Tony not going to do it. He did do it.
Brock had a ton of understeer coming out of there.
See, just that millisecond that he hesitated, and the BMW was through. So much for power to weight ratios that everybody's been bandying around all weekend. The violins have been playing here like a 45-piece Philharmonic orchestra. But we're now seeing touring car racing 1992 with the first of the handicapping formula in place, and I don't think the people responsible have done such a bad job, Mike.
Oh, no, I'll agree with you, Alan. Not a problem at all. Here's the group behind. John Bow going through, Glenn Seaton, and then Laughing Jack Flash. That's Colin Bond in the Caltech Sierra dropping down into the loop. Right behind him, I would think, would be Dick Johnson, one of the Bimmers, goes through. Looking also to see how Trevor Ashby's going. This group of Sierras very, very close.
The Sierras will still be quite delicate to drive, quite twitchy because of the turbo. The turbo comes in and snaps the back wheels loose, fishtails for the layman, and just not quite the dream to drive. And you've seen the way forget the four-wheel drive cars, it's a lay-down misère for them. But the way in which the two BMWs leapt forward is an indication. Normally aspirated engine, a little easier to control. And there, the third BMW passing a Sierra like he was standing still.
That was Paul Morris, who's also running for the Frank Gardner, Tony Longhurst team. And you saw what he did. I'll tell you what, all the, I guess, the whinging about the extra 60 kilos, put them on a wet track. I'll tell you what, isn't that even up the equation?
Wouldn't even know it was on there.
No, you certainly wouldn't.
Mark Scaife, meanwhile, is lapping in high 56-second lap times. It's only about 4 seconds off their dry weather times. It's a pretty remarkable performance on a wet track.
The team's had plenty of time between the first and this heat to make some chassis modifications, and traditionally what you want to do when rain is imminent is to soften up your chassis a bit so she's just a little bit more spongy, let the suspension do much more work than it would normally do in the dry.
Seaton has a look down the inside of Johnson.
That's Wayne Park.
Sorry, that's Wayne Park, his teammate. Thanks very much, Dick. Wayne gets some good acceleration at the stop corner there. Dick's fighting at the wheel, a little bit sideways. The car snaps sideways under power coming up onto the main straight. And Seaton, Park, has cleaned him up and gone.
Yeah, quite a number of explosions going off in the background. We can hear them even through the building here today. The rev limiters, when they hit the 7.5 mark, they go off like a bang. Sounds like a hand grenade, a big firecracker. And quite a number of them are banging away at the moment. They're going off as the revs come up.
Is there concern amongst the Sierra runners, Alan, that this backfiring when they hit the rev limiter could damage the engines?
They'd like to believe it. It's so scary and makes so much noise that you think it's doing a lot of harm, but the engine doesn't seem to know any different. And I don't suppose 1,000 kilometers you'd want to do it every lap, but occasionally in a sprint like this, not really going to be the end of the world. But
isn't this fascinating stuff here? John Bow has got Glenn Seaton in here in car number 30, the Peter Jackson entry, turns into the turn. Right behind him, of course, Colin Bond, who's in there, and then Paul Morris in the number 23 BMW.
And he's never driven the car, I don't know, other than testing, certainly not been blooded in Group A touring car racing. He's doing a very fine job, but it's his opening baptism of fire here, and he's mixing it with some pretty heavy-handed fellows here. Yes. Bondi, of course, living in Sydney, Mike, would know the way he would like to have his car set up, and I think is harassing the two cars in front of him quite efficiently, just looking for a slight opportunity to get by under brakes. It might be a touch here. Close.
How tight do you like
I've got the feeling Morris is going to gain handsomely out of this. These three are having a huge scrap. Seaton doesn't want to give way under brakes. He's on the brakes early. Naturally, Bond's car is loose in the tail end.
Paul Morris gets squeezed out.
Something's back. He's had it. Engine's gone. Missed a gear change or something. He's out of the equation there now.
Aggressive stuff from Paul Morris. Talented youngster, came out of the Formula Ford scene last year, drafted into the B&H team. A lot of touring car fans may not recognise that car. It's actually the T car from Bathurst last year.
A lot of smoke coming out of John Bow's car. I don't think that's overrun smoke. It's definitely a little bit of extracurricular activity there.
You think it's, I thought it may have been a guard rubbing on there. Yes, it looks like that on the tyre. We'll wait and see on that one. But there's Paul Morris scarpering away from that group as he comes down.
I think you're right, Mike. There's smoke coming out of that left front, John Bow's Shell Sierra, and could be worrisome for him. It's stopped raining. The track is drying out, and
5-second lead between the leading Winfield Nissans and the GIO Nissan and Mark Gibbs. So they're splitting up, but coming very close behind Mark Gibbs is the first of the B&H BMWs.
Well, Colin's back on fire. He must have just had a temporary lapse there or something. Perhaps he missed a gear change. He's back on this trio and mixing it up with John Bow, Glenn Seaton.
As they go over the top, that group that we can see, which includes John Bow and Wayne Park in 35, the second of the PJ cars, and then of course it's Colin Bond. Now, as Alan deduced, he got off the pace a bit there, but I tell you what, he's picked them up like you couldn't believe. But where are you going to pass them?
Well, only with a little bit of a do-or-die move. Traffic didn't help him then, but he's certainly in a position. If Wayne Park makes the slightest miscalculation, Colin will be on him.
Meanwhile, Jim Richards has taken the lead from Mark Skeef at the front of the grid, as the Turbo Fords put on one heck of a show here. Haven't seen torrid dicing like this from the Sierras for a long time. Nose to tail, door handle to door handle, as they head up the straight for the next time. Wayne Park doing an excellent job jumping into the Peter Jackson team
Watch
this year.
Yep. Here's Mark Gibson, the GIO Nissan, running third, and all over him like a wet blanket is Tony Longhurst.
If you have a look at the other side of Tony's car as they come into view here, you can see there's been some damage on the door. Whether he's been leaning on Gibbs or what happened earlier on.
As long as the wheels are turning, we won't worry about the odd door. These BMW doors are fairly inexpensive.
And I'll tell you what, Alan, Mark Gibbs is not that far behind Jim Richards and Mark Skeef.
No, it's a great performance, and Tony, of course, certainly knows how to point this beautifully prepared little car. And he's taken advantage of the situation here today and launched himself in the second heat. And it will help him over in the overall standings. He's not out of it by any means. He's driving very aggressively there. Fairly brave, hitting those curbs when they're still damp. But he obviously has a great deal of confidence in his car, and he's harassing Gibbs at the moment.
All the GTR boys have been complaining this year with the reduction in horsepower, how it's affected the handling of the car. It seems to be understeering quite heavily now.
There he goes.
Tony says thanks very much.
And there's not much Mark can do except try and out-accelerate him, and Tony's got to run with him on the inside unless Mark gets across there, which he can't do. Now, you'll find that Longhurst will get through. He'll shorten up the turn to make sure he can't get back on the inside.
Now, these two guys are only 4 seconds behind the leading Freddie Gibson cars, Skeef and Richards. So the field is gradually bunching up, and I guess if the track does start to dry out, Alan, the BMW on wet weather tyres would have the advantage, would it?
Well, being the lightest car, it should deteriorate the least. Now's the time for the fellows to start drifting around on the wet part of the track, keeping the tires cool and making sure that they don't chunk out. But we're not at desperate stage yet.
Okay, let's check them out for you on our Shell race score as they come down the back straight. Your race leader is Jimmy Richards in the Winfield Nissan, followed by Mark Skeef in the team car. Third is Tony Longhurst in the B&H BMW. Fourth, Mark Gibbs in the GIO Nissan. And fifth is Alan Jones in the second of the Bimmers. Quite a race and a great finish coming up. When you left us, the two Nissans 1-2, and this guy, Tony Longhurst, closing just a little. Situation hasn't changed as he moves in to put a lap on Brian Callahan in the number 37 V8 Commodore. Longhurst barreling down into the left-hander.
Track is practically dry, Mike, for all intents and purposes. A little bit of spray there makes it look still dangerous, but in reality, there is a dry line, and just whether there are enough laps. Frank Gardner looking worried. I don't think he's got too much to worry about, and I don't believe anyone would be prepared to come in and change to dry weather tires with a few remaining laps.
No, they'd be throwing the race away. The two boys and the Nissan's doing a good job, Mark Scaife and Jimmy Richards.
We're 13.5 minutes into the race, so we're beyond half distance. So it's going to be critical time from now on. BMW.
He likes those curbs,
Well,
don't
he's
he?
driving very aggressively. You have to do that to get a good line in the right-hander, Michael. He's just crimping every little bit of real estate that he can. And obviously, he's well prepared for the jarring that the suspension takes when he hits that bump. But it's fairly nerve-wracking at any time to hit a curb with a Group A car. It's very easy to tip them over.
And still trying to pick up a bit of water on the track too, Alan, to keep the tyres a little cool, or that hasn't come into play as yet?
They should be trying, but there's limited areas now where they can truly get any advantage at all. If there were 20 laps in front of us, they'd have to change.
Here's Paul Morris making a move down on the outside of Glenn Seaton. Seaton came up to fourth. Morris making a big lunge down the outside. Seaton will probably outbrake him going into this corner and keeping to the outside. Oh, he came straight across, so that was for Glenn.
Again, the turbo lag coming in. That's the worst corner on the track for a Sierra. Down to the very lowest gear, and the turbo down to very few RPM, and the instant response that the BMW had, he was able to pull out of that corner, and now he's gone.
Great performance from Paul Morris. Takes 6th place away from Glenn Seaton. And for a youngster in his first touring car race, this is an excellent showing. Comes up behind Terry Finnegan in the Foodtown Commodore.
Jimmy Richards, in the meantime, getting on the inside of Scaife on the run to the late corner to take over the lead. Just managed to pull that. So the Nissan still 1-2.
And behind these guys, Tony Longhurst is really closing the gap, who's within 3 seconds of this leading duo.
They head up to the top of the hill again.
He's definitely well and truly got them in his sights, and he'll make every inch of the road pay for him. There's no indication that the GTRs are in any trouble whatsoever, but Tony Longhurst is certainly closing.
Well, they got into wheel-to-wheel stuff down at the lake last time. As you can see, Scaife now is out to a brief lead over Jimmy Richards. Jim Richards, considered the rain master. Wouldn't say he loves racing in the rain, but when he's forced to race in the rain, he does it very, very well. He's not really driving in the rain. They're now trying to...
They are being very careful now, Mike. They're not thrashing the cars around at all.
Headlights ablaze. Tony Longhurst in the B&H Bimmer, car number 25. Loses out to the Nissans on this run up Bitchapave Hill, but he is getting closer.
There's only 2 places the BMWs beat the all-conquering Nissans last year, Lakeside and this place, Amaroo Park. Tony Longhurst looking menacing in these changeable conditions, but you can see there's definitely a dry line has been cast. There's no spray coming up, or very little spray coming up from the cars now.
He's getting great traction. The tires are warm. They're not as hot as they would be in the dry, but they are warm. And now running a rain tire on the dry surface, they're getting even hotter. They got a tremendous amount of grip, and just with a little bit of nursing, he can really hound that car around and get a good performance, good lap time each lap.
So the guys in the GTRs now, I guess, would really be having to tiptoe their way around the circuit and to try and conserve those tires.
With 1,400 kilos that they have to carry, even with the four-wheel drive, they will be less of a problem. Here's
first one in, Alan.
Yep,
Car
Dick.
number 17, Dick Johnson.
Yep.
Fresh rubber for Johnson, the first of the Sierra drivers. He'll be going to slicks.
Still 56-second lap times by the GTRs up front, so they're holding their pace, but Longhurst is going faster.
Yes, bear in mind the rain tires, as we refer to them, are only tread it to take care of the rain, but they are the softest compounds.
Yeah.
They're almost like qualifying tires, which are the softest that are ever made by the tire companies. And Tony Longhurst's car will be performing very well. I think what we just saw Dick have go up there with a brand new tire, lurched into that corner, and it kind of gave him a little feedback in the steering. I think you get a little bit of a knock back there, and he's just warming the tires up a little bit, getting himself. Now you can see every time he touches the gas pedal, the rear tires are breaking loose. This is the turbo problem.
Okay, Dick Johnson with a new set of boots on, coming down. We've got a few cars here, Dick. I don't know whether we should talk to you now.
Oh, mate, I don't think it really matters, Mike.
How hard is that dry line to find?
Pretty hard at the moment, I can tell you. I got into a bit of a tank slapper over the top before. So we'll just have to sort of just keep it all straight and keep on the dry bits.
Well, this is good for your character, Dick. It takes you back to your youth, and you know, it reminds you when you used to drive the Toronto sideways.
Mate, I can hardly wait. This is just so much fun.
Well, how does it feel out there now with a new set of slicks on?
It feels a damn side better than what it was. I made a dreadful mistake because I put some other tyres on. Not only other tyres that I put on, but I've changed the setup of the car, which was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Get a handle like a dog.
Woof.
Yeah, farewell.
Okay, I'll let you get back to it. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Mike.
Dickie Johnson continues up the front straight. And here are our leaders. And a great day for Freddie Gibson, I would think, at this stage. Mark Scaife and Jimmy Richards. They take off, heading down to the Lake Corner. Tony Longhurst is in hot pursuit. Let's go down to Andy Raymond, who's with Freddie Gibson.
And a very happy Fred Gibson down here with me at the moment. Nissan 1, 2, 3, but Winfield Nissan 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's a long way to go yet, but like the track's dried out now and it's sort of starting to get a very much of a dry line. There's been a few guys made the dry tyres. We're in a situation now we can't afford to do that with Tony where he is. We're just going to keep pressing on and hope the tyres last out and keep chasing the water and see go to the finish. So we'll see what happens. There's a long way to go yet, bud.
There was a rumour going around the pits that you have ordered the rain here at Amaroo Park.
Well, I ordered rain, okay, and it has come. And I wish it would rain again now because we need some rain again right now.
Thank you, Freddie. Thanks, Andy. They head down the back straight. Mark Scaife, the number 2 Nissan. Jimmy Richards right behind him. But I'll tell you what, I think there's a major problem with Tony Longhurst, who's been gobbled up again by Mark Gibbs back behind them. He's dropped off the pace. They've started to open it up again, and I think that Mark Gibbs will be all over Tony Longhurst as they head down. There's Alan Jones. He's in for a change of tyres, and he hasn't been as critical on his tyres as Tony has been.
Always a calculated risk, Mike. You can just tell, depending on the force which the drivers are using, they can burn them up. As I mentioned before, they are the softest compound, and there's only so much hammering that they'll take, and it does look as if Tony's definitely cooked his and gone over the limit.
Well, there's a black flag being held for Tony's car 25.
Well, they won't black flag him for hitting the curbs, and we didn't see him sideswiping anybody else. It'll be interesting to see what officialdom has got this time.
There's a little bit of confusion surrounding this black flag incident. We'll get back to that. 21 and a half minutes into the race, so we only have 2 or 3 laps left.
It's not that long to go. Maybe it could have been for one of those lap cars that he was passing. Here we pick up on Jimmy Richards coming down behind Mark Scaife to the Lake Corner. They've been able to get away. It has clouded over again, so poor old Dick's going to be in even more strife because it looks like the heavens are ready to open up, and he's going to be the only one out there on, well, he and Alan Jones on slicks.
If it rains again, he'll just have to stop.
Yep.
That'll be out of the question. But,
so Nissan's 1, 2 and 3, as Andy called earlier.
Both Jim and Mark driving these cars very cautiously. They're not smoking them up at all.
They've been very smooth throughout this race. Got away to a brilliant start, as you would expect a 4-wheel drive car to do on a wet racetrack. And that advantage has been pushed home now by Mark Gibbs in the 3rd GTR, who's been able to get around the outside again of Tony Longhurst.
We've just had word from the pits that there he is, car 25. Longhurst has been pinged for noise infringements as well.
we've got an abnormal situation here. When I say abnormal, the authorities don't, where we live in an echo chamber here, and the noise attacks these people. They pass one day, then they're noisy the next. It's very, very hard, but the officers are here with their meter and sound gun, listening to every car.
Okay, Tony Longhurst fairly unhappy. Let's go down to Andy Raymond.
Thanks very much, Mike. In third place and a very dejected Tony Longhurst has pulled into the pits. Tony, what seems to be the problem?
They've black flagged us for noise. The cloud covers come over, and because our car revs so hard, the induction noise has obviously brought the decibels up. They put the flag out, so I dropped 1,000 revs and started to use the higher gears, but they continued to hold the flag out.
1 lap to go for race 2, round 1 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. And I would think a red letter day also for Tom Smith and the Shell team, because the two Nissans are co-sponsored by Shell as they exit the late turn and work their way down the back straight for the final time. Good start to the season for them. You can see just how dynamic the GTR is as a rain machine. But earlier today in the dry, we saw just how close the racing was between Sierras and obviously Holden. And that augurs very well for the next round of the championship, a fortnight from today at the beautiful Sandown Motor Raceway in Victoria, and see whether or not Nissan can repeat there, or will Brocky be able to do it. Coming up to the last corner now as they swing on the way to the checkered flag, and it's about to come up. A 1-2 for the Winfield Nissan team across the line. Mark Scaife taking the heat win, second going to Jim Richards, and third, a remarkable third, to the GIO Nissan GTR of Mark Gibbs of Sydney. Let's check them out for you on the race score. Heat number 2 this afternoon, Mark Scaife the winner. Jimmy Richards, teammate, places in second. Mark Gibbs, a good effort that, running in third. Paul Morris, splendid effort to finish in fourth, and Peter Brock in 0-5 rounds out the 5. We'll be back to talk to the winners after the break. Welcome back to Amaroo Park Raceway. Well, the combined points from the 2 races today, 2 heats of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Mark Scaife, the winner overall, on 54 points. Second, Peter Brock on 49. Third, Richards on 48. Glenn Seaton finishes fourth on 44, and Mark Gibbs on 38. A happy group of winners. Let's go to Mark Osler.
Well, the same cast as 1991, but a slightly different script this year. And Jimmy Richards finishing third place in the Nissan GTR. Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jimmy, I know under the regulations the cars have been fairly heavily penalised. It must be hard work out there now with the GTR as opposed to last year.
Well, it is, and especially with the 2-heat system, you've got to really plan the race. And of course, you could say we planned our race for the second heat to be dry, and it wasn't. So we probably suffered a little bit being first and third.
Do you think the car will be equally competitive at tracks like Sandown, where the power is the most?
Sandown will be hard for us because you've got 2 long straights coming out of slow corners, and without the power that we had, the car still weighs 1,400 kilos, and it'll be difficult, but I think they'll still be competitive for sure.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks, Jim.
This way.
And second place over the aggregate of the 2 heats. A surprise, and glad to see him back, Peter Brock in the Holden Commodore. Obviously, Peter, you've got a big following there.
Well, it's been a fair while between drinks for Commodores and sprint races. In fact, we were talking about it earlier, and the last Touring Car Championship sprint race a Commodore ever won was at Surfers Paradise in 1986, and I was driving this VK Commodore, so, you know, it's about time we won another one. But I think it could be the first of many. The car's going very well.
Terrific, Rocky. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And the winner up today, same as last year, Mark Scaife in the Nissan GTR. Well done, Scaife. Looked like hard work out there with the tyres okay toward the end of the race, you think?
Well, you know, it's never easy working in front of Richard, so he made me work all the way, and at one stage there, Tony was catching us, so it was a really good race.
Well done, Scaife. Terrific.
Thank you. Thanks, mate.
And Tom Smith to make the presentation to Mark Scaife.
Congratulations, Mark, on behalf of Shell. Magnificent drive.
Thank you.
Pretty good.
And happy feelings here on the presentation, but a dark and very wet Amaroo Park, Mike.
Certainly, Mark. There's the scene as the rain pelts down. Hope you've enjoyed our telecast, and you can join us 1 week from today when we go to Calder.